Hello, friends. I am here today to do my TV wrap up as well as my film wrap up. I'm going to just jump in with the TV shows that I watched during April, May, and June because I literally have 2 shows that I completed during this time, which is far less than usual. I guess I was just doing other things. So, kicking it off with April, the first and only thing that I watched during that time is Vox Machina season 2, which I ended up giving a 5 stars. So I pretty much chucked this on immediately after finishing season 1, which I talked about in my last one of these videos. I thought this was a fantastic follow-up to the first season. They had exploration of the dragon storyline, which I thought was amazing. I love dragons. I love anything to do with more like sentient dragons, so ones that have like consciousness, the ones that speak and have their own aspirations and things like that. Not always the ones that are bonded with like dragon riders, although I do like those stories too, but this one was really dark and I loved it. I love that exploration, and I also really enjoyed having more of Grog and Vox and Vax's background story as well. I think I mentioned in the last season that we kind of seem to have episodes every now and then where it does focus on a particular character and you get a little bit more of their origin story and kind of how they ended up in this sort of miscellaneous group, but I do tend to favour those particular origin story episodes. But yeah, overall this was a 5 out of 5 stars. In May, I watched Cyberpunk Edgerunner, which I gave, again, a 5 out of 5 stars. I absolutely adored this series. I've heard a lot of people say that after the not favourable opinions on the game, they kind of pulled their fingers out a bit and delivered this amazing animated TV series. It got into it so fast, and even though it was super action-packed and messed up, there were some really beautiful moments, and I can say this actually made me sob, in shock, in emotion, in just pure, I can't believe this has happened, what is going on. I was invested in this show, and I really, really wanted more from it. But, I mean, unless they go into, like, the past or they follow a particular storyline, I'm not sure. I feel like it's really kind of concluded in this. I feel like it's a very limited TV series, and I'd be fine with that. It's just, you know, when you love something so much, it's like, I want more in the world, but then there's, you know, risk of it going to shit. Nevertheless, I thought this was a fantastic little TV series. So heading over to the movies I watched during this time period, let's of course start again with April. It seems more varied. I've definitely got a couple more, more than a couple more movies that I watched as opposed to the TV shows being only 2. So again, starting off with April, I watched Cloverfield, which I gave a 3 stars. So this was something that I wanted to get into a franchise. Of late, I've been kind of focusing on franchises. Recently, it was the Alien Predator universe. I've sort of recently started Star Wars, which I think I might talk about in this video. I'm not too sure. Yep, Star Wars I talk a little bit about, but I've kind of gone on a bit of a hiatus for watching those movies. But this particular one, it was Cloverfield, and I really wanted to kind of finally give this a go. I always thought this was a zombie movie, and I don't really know why, but at the time when it was coming out, it didn't really appeal to me until I saw the trailer at the time for 10 Cloverfield Lane, which, I mean, I'll talk about a bit later. But anyway, as I was watching this, it gave me VHS vibes, you know, that horror kind of short story series, which I've also talked about on the channel, with the shaky cam, found footage kind of aesthetic that it went for. I think the acting could have been so much better, and also there wasn't a lot of plot, but I kind of get what they were going for. It was enjoyable. After all the leaving party stuff, I literally said I'm bored, and then shit went down. At this point, I was like, I would watch another one, and I did, as you will see a little bit later. Following that, I watched a movie called The Witch Files, which I ended up giving a 2.5. This was, I think it was on Amazon Prime. It was just a random one I decided to stick on. Cheesy, light-hearted fun that I'm probably not going to remember past the week. And do you know what? That was true. Also, I was a bit thrown off as most of the cast looked like late 20s, early 30s to be playing high schoolers. It just was really jarring. And all the stuff Jules was saying felt like she read one book on witchcraft and dubbed herself the Queen Supreme. It was a lot. After that, I checked out 10 Cloverfield Lane, which I gave a 4 stars. I really enjoyed this follow-up. It was eerie, uncomfortable, and action-packed right at the end. I don't get how these movies connect, though. is it more of like an anthology series, sort of like Black Mirror, where it's in the same universe but like they're not completely connected? I don't know, but they are, and not necessary in a direct series. I don't know, you guys can tell me if you have any thoughts on that. Finally, after wanting to watch this for a good long while, Old, which I gave a 4 stars. This is definitely one of those better M. Night Shyamalan movies, in my opinion. I really enjoyed this. The concept was really interesting and disturbing, and I think the storyline was super gripping. I liked that as the kids got older, you could still hear their childish talk and awkward moves as they weren't used to their accelerated bodies. I felt that for a horror, they shied away from showing a lot of the grotesque moments, which was a bit of an odd choice. I personally would have preferred to see it. The reasons behind the island was such a grey area, but I don't think it's too far out a thing to happen. Like, it felt kind of believable in the science behind it, from the actual strangeness of the island itself, of course. Overall, I really liked this one. I thought it had a really good cast as well. Next up, I watched Persuasion of the 2022 variety. This one I gave a 4 stars. This was honestly such a delight. I watched the adaptation pretty much straight after reading the book, and I've got to say it was so much easier to follow. The thread of characters with the visuals of people on the screen just made it that much easier to see what was happening and who was who. Because I wasn't lumbered down with overwhelm of who was who and their connections to one another, I was able to better appreciate, you know, the good humour and the satire that poked fun at polite society and propriety. This is something that definitely went over my head and I wasn't able to focus on when I was reading the book, because I was just so confused at who was talking, especially when they refer to that their maiden name and then their first name and then their new married surname, and it was just like, I don't know who you are anymore. I loved Anne's nods and winks to the audience. It made the humour carry further, and she felt like so much more personable in this version of her. I know they changed her character a lot from the original. I know a lot of people were irritated that they Fleabag-defied her. I think the main character is from Fleabag, but I've never watched it myself. I enjoyed this image change personally. I think it made her more likeable and, you know, relatable. They seem to change a lot of the plot too, but I'm not going to lie, it made it more comfortable for me to follow along with and just enjoyable generally. The cast was fantastic and I had an absolutely beautiful time laughing, swooning and overall enjoying this movie. Next up, Beautiful Creatures, 1 star. This is one of the first books that I DNF'd, even though I think I did it unintentionally. I just kind of put it down and, you know, never returned to it. But it's a series that got so much love that I thought I'd finally try the movie and just kind of, you know, revisit that world and hopefully find out what happens at the end. And it was not good at all. I could have definitely done without watching this. So yeah, there's that. Mario Bros movie, 4 stars. This was so much fun. I loved how they stayed true to the aspects of the game, and even though I originally didn't understand why Chris Pratt was cast as Mario, he wasn't as jarring as I thought. I love the dimensional blend of worlds and the brotherly bond between Mario and Luigi. I think Jack Black and Anya Taylor-Joy was stellar in their voice acting for Bowser and Princess Peach. Overall, I'm glad I decided to check this out for myself because it was such a feel-good, entertaining movie that pulled out a lot of nostalgia for lovers of the game. In May, I watched a couple of movies. The first one being an actual documentary. I think I found this on YouTube. This is The Girl Who Escaped, the Cara Robinson story, which was 4 stars. So I think I'd been hearing this sound around quite a lot. Like there was a sound that was, you know, snipped out of the movie, and I was like, what is this sound that's going around? And people were doing like acting challenges to it or whatever. Anyway, I did some like investigating, some sleuthing, and I found it was this. It is a horrible but inspiring true story about a young girl who is kidnapped outside her street for 18 hours, subject to sexual assault, before managing to escape. I think it took so much guts to wait her ordeal out and slip away at the best chance possible, and I think she showed so much strength in trying to get back to her normal life so her attacker could hold no power over her. It was fascinating watch, and yeah, very important. You know, you don't have to be in an unknown place to be targeted. It can literally be outside your street, outside your front door, or your friend's front door in this case. Up, New Mutants, 3 stars. I finally got around to watching this one, and I really don't think it was as awful as a lot of people were saying. I just think it was a bit of an overall strange reason to make a film. It wasn't as horror as I was expecting, but it got some screams out of me. I enjoyed the Native American representation in our main character and the story of the 2 bears and ultimately conquering your fears. I loved Maisie Williams in this, but I was disappointed by Anya Taylor-Joy's character. I wasn't expecting her to be such a bitch and like super racist, and her whole power itself was a bit bizarre, and I just didn't really get it. kind of sweet and wholesome as it was spawned from the mind of a child, but to see it with the type of character personality that Anya Taylor-Joy's character was in this instance, it was just a bit odd. I don't know. It was a fun film, but I don't know if it added much to the universe. I watched Day Shift, which is a new vampire movie on Netflix, and I gave that 5 stars. This was such a fun film. It gave me vibes of like Bright and Power, so if you like those movies, definitely check this out. It's got that magical realism theme to it, so a lot of strange, wonderful things happening in our very kind of modern day society in the heart of an American city sort of thing. Yeah, it had a solid story, humour and action, and I absolutely loved it. We got to check out Antman and the Wasp, Quantamania, which was on Disney+, and I gave this one a 3.5 stars. It wasn't as captivating as I was expecting it to be, honestly. There's a good backing story as to Janet's time there previously, and I loved the family adventure. There's some really great plot twists and Easter eggs for the other Marvel movies, so I'm excited to see more linking into the next movie, especially as we continue to explore more of the multiverse. However, I'm definitely glad I didn't spend my money on it in the cinema, because I would have been much more underwhelmed, I think. Alrighty, in June, the first film I finished was Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, 3.5 stars. Again, this was the first time watching this after a lot of nagging from my other half. It was so much more than what the title says, but I enjoyed this more than I expected to. I thought the world building was good, and I enjoyed finally seeing the Force in action. I liked how much Queen Padme cared for her people, and learning about Jedis was super cool. Just the reason I didn't really find this sort of space sci-fi interesting to me for the longest time, and I still don't really, but I thought, okay, my other half's really keen on it, he really wants me to give it a go. I couldn't keep denying that, after all the crap I've made him watch. After that, I checked out The Omen, 3.5 stars. One of those more modern day classic horror psychological films, I guess. It was a lot of fun, but it wasn't as super horrifying as I was expecting, but entertaining film. I don't really remember much from it now. It's also very different to what I was expecting, and I think there's another one, like the older version. I watched the more like the 2000s one. Can't remember the exact date at the minute off the top of my head, but there's an original one before this, so maybe that's more frightening, I'm not too sure. Back on the Star Wars kick, I continued on with Attack of the Clones, which I ended up giving, unfortunately, a 2 stars. I think this one suffered for me due to the direction of the romance. I just didn't buy it, and I couldn't help but find the whole movie consumed by it. Anakin is, I wrote here, so full on with Padme, but honestly, he was creepy. He was really odd, and I think the whole reason that nobody is like really playing into that creep factor is because he's generically attractive, but really the way he like speaks to Padme when she's clearly trying to be professional is just gross and creepy, and I feel like he almost used the Force to brainwash her to love him. It was just off-putting, to be honest. I just did not like it. I went to the cinema with my brother and his family, and I saw The Little Mermaid, the 2023 version, which I ended up giving it 5 stars. This was perfection. This was everything and more. Halle was so fantastic, and I think that casting for the whole character selection was diverse and beautiful. Halle's voice was absolutely ethereal, and she captured the innocence and naivety of Ariel so well. Eric grew on me, and by the end I was rooting for them both. I was singing along and grinning from ear to ear. There was a new song or two added to this remake, and I loved the addition of adding something new whilst keeping in with the theme and story building of the original. A really wholesome remake all in all. Next up, another new movie, Spiderman Across the Spider-Verse, which I gave a 4.5 stars. This was cinematic excellence. The multimedia aspect perfectly captures the multidimensional plot development. The storytelling was so intense. Who do you trust now? What's right? What is wrong? I don't know! The music was perfect. Once again, I always love the soundtrack of these Miles Morales movies. The plot twists were fantastic. The heartbreak and love was emotional. This was such a solid film. The only reason it doesn't get 5 stars is I hate cliffhangers, and I really didn't think they'd do me dirty like that, but they did it well for something that I don't typically enjoy, and I can't complain that we'll get more in the near future, so there's that. And lastly, I watched 20 Something, which I gave 5 stars. This is a Spark Shot 11-minute short show or film on Disney+. It was super wholesome and a little external validation on being an adult. You basically follow this this girl who's out clubbing with her sister, but in her mind you see her at various different ages, and so physically on the screen you're seeing her like, is it like Codename Kids Next Door, where they all, you know, stand up on each other's shoulders to make an adult? But they're all versions of her, like the baby her, the 10-year-old her, the teenage her, and they're all kind of trying to adult, you know? It's so wholesome. The art style was gorgeous, and I loved the soundtrack too. So that is it for April, May and June's TV shows and movie wrap-ups. You guys are going to have to let me know what you absolutely loved and what you was underwhelmed by. But for now, I shall speak to you in another video soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!